This is Your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On the show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. Plant medicine is making waves across the globe these days, right? We've got more Instagram stuff that's coming to us about Mind Bloom, about doing all of these ketamine treatments and doing all these plant meditation retreats, doing ayahuasca retreats, doing all of these things. And it's not bullshit. Plant medicine is incredible. I look at it as kind of a get out of Western medicine for free card, like we're playing Monopoly with our body all damn day. Well, maybe it's not so much free because the cost of what we put out, not just monetarily, but emotionally and physically that we go through when it comes to chronic pain, we don't get anything for free here. And so it would be nice to get a get out of jail for free card when it comes to plant medicine. And I see it as freedom. And plants aren't just for gardeners and landscapers, they're here to heal us. And so many of the things that are part of Big Pharma and part of a lot of the things that we take in our lives are plant-based. So if we take out all of the other bullshit around it and we just focus on a little bit more about the medicine that comes from plants and the freedom that we can receive from our plants, I think that we might start to turn a little bit away from all of the pill popping that we do in our nation and in our globe, quite frankly. I mean, here in the States, we're just so reliant on not plants. But anyway, so, plants aren't just made here for making fake beef. They're not just here to make processed foods for us. They're here to help us heal. And the healing properties of plants come from everything from chronic pain to depression and anxiety and PTSD and enlightenment, whatever way and how you work within this world from a spiritual perspective, from an emotional perspective, whatever it is, no matter what, you cannot deny the healing properties of what plant medicine can bring to you. Whether you're into it or not, you can't lie about the science. Whoa. Lindsay's talking about science. I know, science. And I'm happy to have you guys meet my guest today, who has gone from what we're calling surviving to thriving using plant and energy medicine. She's an herbalist, energy medicine educator, and trauma-informed, and we talk about it all the time on the show about a trauma-informed approach to care, trauma-informed breathwork facilitator as well. And her body was screaming at her about 12 years ago, and she just kind of ignored the messages. And I definitely understand being deaf to the music of my body sometimes because it feels like I am just surviving and I am not thriving. And I hear these messages and they're a whisper and then they start getting a little louder and then it's a scream. And I'm at that place with my bod where it's screaming at me. Some days it's better than others. Other days it's like, wow, the sound is so overwhelming. So I just want to stop pain management. I want out of it. And I believe wholeheartedly that plant medicine is part of my healing journey. And I've started to work within that space. And I'm starting to learn more about the healing power of plant medicine. And that is why my girl, Amy Stein, is here today. Hi, girl.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hi, listeners. Yeah, so I'm here today to talk about plant medicine, right? Break it down for you.
Break it down.
I'm a person that eats their weeds. I just want to talk about how, first of all, plant medicine has been around and been used since we've been walking around on this earth. So it's something that has been around for 5,000 years, right? So we discount it because it's not fancy. It doesn't come in a bottle. It doesn't cost a lot of money. So it's not taken with the same sort of credence and the intelligence that's there. But there's an intelligence that exists in Mother Nature that also is mirrored in us. So the body recognizes the plants as real medicine. Whereas when we take a pharmaceutical, right, or like we eat fake meat, like you said, the body recognizes it as a toxin. It's not something that's helpful. It actually causes more imbalance in the body. So when we can work closer to nature and respect the intelligence that she has, revering it, understanding that it's the same intelligence that exists within us, we can begin to heal in a healthier way.
And how did you get into it? Because I know that you were trapped in your body with multiple autoimmune diseases and trauma, which we've talked about on the show and we continue to do so. How you pulled yourself out of that through plant-based medicine. So can you talk a little bit about what you were faced with when it came to your autoimmune diseases and like how plant medicine kind of came into place?
Yeah. So for me, I was raised like everybody else. Like you go to the doctor when you're sick, right? And they fix you. And I worked in medicine. I was working as a medical researcher with chronic pain patients, and they were geriatrics. And I began to resemble my patients. And I was like 26, 27. So we've all been taught that when you're sick, you go to the doctor's supposed to fix you. And I worked in medicine, and I was taught that same thing, that, when you have a problem, you go to the doctor, they fix you. And I learned from a very early age as a child that I was having all these issues. My parents were taking me to the doctor and I wasn't getting fixed. Like I was told I was too sensitive. I was told that I was just really stressed out. I was an anxious kid. And there was really never an answer for me. And it reaffirmed this idea of not being seen, not being heard, not being believed. And it didn't feel good. And so when the messages from my body got really loud, when I was working with chronic pain patients, it became to the point that it was unavoidable. I could not stop ignoring them anymore. And so I went on the merry-go-round. I'm going to all the doctors, right? I live in New York. So you throw a pebble, you hit a doctor. Right? We have a lot of doctors here. But the thing is that none of them were looking at the body as a whole, right? And they were not addressing all of the issues that were going on because I didn't fit into the boxes. And so it was a really frustrating 2-3 years where I followed everything they told me to do. And I was already doing things on my own because what they were telling me to do wasn't working. And the idea of when you open up to connecting to your intuition, when you open up to connecting to something higher than you, bigger than you, that the guidance will come. But it's not something, again, that we're taught in our society, right? It's like a foreign concept. And so I began to be led to go on the plant medicine path. And I didn't, it wasn't like I was going to ayahuasca circles or doing peyote. I was eating the weeds in my backyard. I was learning that all the plants I was already growing had medicinal properties, and I began to use them to bring my body back into balance.
What were some of the things that you were struggling with from a health perspective and chronic pain perspective? Because I think that's helpful for our listeners to understand, like, these are some of the things that I was going through from an autoimmune disorder perspective. And now this is what you're foraging, as you call it, right? I mean, it is called foraging.
Yeah.
But what you've done in order to, because you make your own products now, like you're doing like amazing stuff with Mother Nature. So can you talk about what you struggled with and what like really was your like tipping point? Because I think that we all have our tipping point when it comes to pain and autoimmune and brain, like all of it. And me, I've had my listeners know as well that I had this massive concussion and I'm still dealing with like the aftermath of it. It's far better than I was a couple weeks ago, but wow, it is still unbelievable how much that trauma is sitting in my brain and how the only way I've been able to get out of it is by using plants. And it's a very interesting thing that's going on over here. So can you talk to me about a couple of the things that you've been through from an autoimmune perspective? Because I know a lot of the listeners are like, oh gosh, well, does that have anything to do with me?
Yeah. So basically I experienced everything. Like it would be more helpful for me to say what I didn't experience, right? So I had severe GI issues. I had daily migraines. I had daily vertigo.
Oh gosh.
I had severe pain. Yeah, it was like everything and then some. And that was the issue, is because I had so many different symptoms that I didn't fit into the boxes, right? So the doctors all want you to fit into a box, right? So rheumatoid arthritis has all these symptoms. Lupus has all these symptoms, right? And the thing is there's a lot of different things that happen in the body that can't form into a box. You can't put them into a box. And the body is intelligent in that it will give you messages before Western labs will pick them up, right? So you go for lab work and the doctor says there's nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong with you. You're checked into your body because you've lived in it your whole life and they don't, right? So when something feels off, when something is wrong. And I knew that from a very young age, from age 5 on, I knew that there was something going on. But no one was talking about trauma. No one was talking about eating real food. Nobody was talking about anything other than having surgery or taking medication, right? So the breaking point for me was I was at a very well-known hematologist office and he just said, let's do chemotherapy. Like that was his solution. And I said, I don't have cancer. And he said, that's fine. It's all autoimmune in nature. We'll just kill your immune system and hope it grows back. And I looked at my mother and I said, I'm not doing that. Like I'm not that desperate. Like I'm desperate, but I'm not going to do that. And so I began then to guinea pig myself because I was tired of being guinea pig by the doctors and not getting any better. So I took my power back and I began to explore and listen and trust my body with the messages it was giving me. What was I eating that it was not working out well for me? Because there is no ideal diet for everybody. What was the toxins that even though I couldn't see them were making me really sick? Mold, EMFs, smart meters, Wi-Fi, all of that, right? So we had to redo our whole house. We had to remediate the mold. We live on an island, so we remediate mold every year. And it's all these ideas that are not traditionally spoken about that actually make a huge difference to the body. We live in an extremely toxic world and we're exposed to so many different things that we don't even realize. And so when you can begin to be aware of what you're putting in and on your body, the things that you have control over, you can begin to work with the body rather than against it.
Yeah, and I like that. I'm a little verklempt about verklempt. Yes. I'm a little verklempt about the fact, the topic of smart homes and all of the technology that we have in our lives. It's obviously radiating us in some freaking way. We'll never know because we'll be, part of the earth when all of this comes to fruition. But what have you done in your home? Because that's almost a little scary to me that you're like, well, we had to change things in our home. We had to change things from a smart house perspective. What have you done in relation to that?
Yeah, I mean, I made a lot of changes probably 10 years ago because I looked to the research. The research is from the 1950s when they were doing, actually goes back further than that, but the majority of research is from the 1950s around radio waves. And so there's natural electromagnetic frequencies that exist outside in Mother Nature. So if you go to the beach and you're on vacation, you feel great, right? If you go hiking in the woods, the first thing you do when you get out of the car, you just take a deep breath, especially if you live in the city. But we don't realize how much we're exposed to so many things that we can't see, right? You can't see dirty air pollution unless you're in a city. But even just living in the suburbs, there's dirty air that you're breathing. And actually the air inside your house is actually dirtier than the air outside because we use all these fragrances and all these chemicals that are sprayed on our furniture and on the carpets and on the hardwood floors. So we had to environmentally, my husband is an engineer, so we had to re-engineer the entire house. So we had to build the house all over again because of the mold. And then we had to ground everything because dirty electricity creates magnetic frequencies that if you're sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies, it's going to make you sicker. It increases the fields of the magnetization that I can feel it in my body. So it feels like a humming, it feels like a vibration, but it increases the vertigo, increases the migraine. I didn't understand any of that. I didn't understand why I went to a store with fluorescent lights, I would feel really sick. It felt like I was actually my battery was being drained. And so I feel a lot better when I'm outside. And because it's a natural frequency that my body respects and actually needs, where when we revere technology so much in our society, where I spend all the time on screens, right? Everything is screen related. Our body gets out of balance and it actually is detrimental because we're absorbing all these harmful frequencies. And so the same thing with the water you drink, right? If you're drinking out of plastic, you're drinking chemicals. If you're drinking tap water, the majority of tap water in this country is not clean, right? But we think we live in a society with clean water. We don't. And so all these chemicals that are pumped in to sanitize the water are actually really detrimental. So we filter our water. We have a filter that we use. We filter the water we bathe in because your skin is your largest organ. So you're picking up all of the things that your skin is exposed to. I'm really careful about what I put in and on my body, right? So personal care products, the products you use to clean your house, those are all filled with massive amounts of chemicals that are going to disrupt all the processes of your body. So that was the first step of what I did. And that's the first step that I advise anybody to do is to examine their toxic load, right? So we don't have any smart appliances. Well, our TV is probably 25 years old and that's fine. It works, right? Everything is hardwired. So there is no Wi-Fi in my house. We don't run off Wi-Fi. Everything is hardwired into the router and the modem. And so there's a lot of wires, but I don't feel sick. We don't have a smart meter on our house. We don't have cordless phones. We don't use baby monitors. All of these things all have harmful frequencies, but we just accept them as part of life. We don't realize the damage they're doing to the body.
Well, I'm pretty sure that everybody that's listening to this is going to be like, oh, fuck. Because I'm literally looking around just in my studio right now and the massive amounts of frequency that's pummeling my brain and my body. But I can't stop all of that in order to be healthy in my world. So as we are thinking about healing from a plant medicine perspective, can you talk about that a little bit in regards to that side of it outside of the messages that we're getting from technology? Because I know we know all about them. I just wanted to stay focused on the plant side of things.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an awareness, right? So it's an awareness of spending more time outside rather than on technology, right? So rather than when you get home from work and going on your phone and doing social media, it's going outside, being outside, communing with nature. It's having that awareness of how can I change my behavior so that I'm less reliant on technology for everything, right? So you can put your Wi-Fi router on a Christmas timer and it goes off every night when you sleep so that you're not being radiated while you're sleeping because no one's on Wi-Fi when they're sleeping, right? So it's being aware of my behaviors that I have control over and how I can respect the intelligence that exists around me with Mother Nature and looking at her for examples, right? So she's resilient. So even though she's bombarded by all of these different toxins, just like we are, she's resilient in that the way that she course corrects without overthinking, right? So she just understands how to do that because she doesn't actually let all of the outside noise, external noise affect her. So it's communing more with the intelligence that she has and understanding that we also have that same intelligence and how we can bring that back in. So like you talk about the products I make. So I made a herbal balm for EMF issues. I made a tincture. So a tincture is you put plants together with some sort of alcohol. You soak it for 4 to 6 weeks and then you strain out the plants and the alcohol, or you can use apple cider vinegar, pulls the medicinal properties out of the plants. And the liquid that is left is infused with all those medicinal properties. So like I said, all plants have medicinal properties. So I did all the research of what plants are great for decreasing electromagnetic frequencies. There are a lot of crystals that are great for decreasing electromagnetic frequencies. All of these things come from the earth. They're all natural. They're all, they're not changed in any way. They're just raw materials that work with the body. So I began bringing more crystals into my house. My husband would be like, another rock, right? But it makes me feel better. So it's finding what makes you feel better in a way that is easy for you to implement into your life. So I don't ever advocate for anybody to do what I do because I'm extremely rigid because I have to be, right? But there are suggestions that everybody can do that can be manageable. Like I mentioned, the Christmas timer on the Wi-Fi router, the choosing to not have all smart appliances, choosing to get outside in nature rather than binge watching or being on social media. When you're walking your dog, to actually be present with walking the dog, listening to the birds, smelling the sweetness of the spring air. It's 90 degrees here today in New York, and that's really rare. But I was outside with the dog this morning when it was only 80 degrees, and we spent time outside before it got too hot. And so I was watching my seedlings and I was looking to see what I could forage for my smoothie and what I could plan for ahead of time if things started to get, if the heat still stays. So it's this idea of working with nature, which is something we don't do in our society. It's something that we did for thousands of years. And now it's kind of like, that we don't want to do that. But actually, when you can get back to nature, you can balance the body in a way that pharmaceuticals can't do.
Yeah, I mean, pharmaceuticals don't even get me started on that whole situation. But when you're talking about using plant medicine, you've talked about making your own balms and making your own things and foraging and going out and eating your own weeds, which sounds like crazy making, right? And I think that when people think about plant medicine, they think about dropping acid. They think about scary stuff that can happen from plant-based medicine. Sure. So how can you help us feel a little bit better about you're not going to go down a freaking K-hole because you're eating some weeds because people think of plant medicine in so many different ways. Can you kind of explain to us the difference between the different types of plant medicine and what you feel is the best for chronic pain patients from your perspective, of course, and connecting with Mother Nature as their guide?
Yeah. So the first thing is that to forage is it's also called wild crafting, is when you go out into the woods or your backyard, if you live in a suburb, and you harvest the weeds that are growing. And so the weeds are actually more medicinally and nutritionally potent than anything you could like grow from a seed packet or anything you could grow at a big box store, right? If you're going to plant a garden. And the reason for that is because Mother Nature is kind of like her gift to you. Like all the time I talk to people and they'll say, I'm having X, Y, and Z is my issue, right? And so I'm never going to tell them, use this essential oil or use this plant for that, because it's not how it works. Every plant has its own properties and its own constitution. Ayurveda talks about this, right? And so do we as humans. So Lyndsay and I can take the exact same plant and have exactly two different experiences, right?
Sure.
So I don't do psychedelics. Like I'm not going to go to I'm not going to do any of that because that scares me. Like it scares you, right? But I will eat my weeds because we don't spray anything. We don't put any chemicals down on our properties. That's a first step. If you're going to forage, has this area been sprayed by Roundup or glyphosate? Or has a chemical fertilizers been put down? So if it's your own property, you should know that, right? But you have to be careful because if your neighbor sprays, that spray is going to travel in the air. It's going to affect your stuff, right? So like, even though I garden organically, I live in the world. And so there are chemtrails and there are other things going on. So it's about being aware, all of this, regardless if you're open to plant medicine, it's a being aware of this idea. Even if it seems different and weird to you and like, oh, it's woo-woo, is what you're doing now serving you, right? It's being curious. Like, is what I'm doing now serving me, right? So for Lyndsay and I, it was not. So pharmaceuticals and the traditional Western approach were not serving me. So I went back to real traditional medicine, which is plant medicine, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, all of those healing techniques, right? But there are so many different modalities and so many different ways to do it. So you could just find someone who makes herbal balms like I do, right? And you can sample those. That's introducing plants back into you. You don't have to make it yourself. Like you don't have to go and grow all this stuff and grow. Like I would love for people to advocate for growing their food and their medicine. But I know it's not realistic. I know that not everybody wants to do that, and that's fine. But find people that you trust, right? Go to your local farmer's market. Ask them what they're growing. Ask them if they spray. And if they don't spray on their property, ask to gather their weeds, right? So there are resources that you can find locally, even if you live in an apartment. I mean, they do foraging walks in Central Park in Manhattan. So I would never eat anything there because it's so dirty, but like because of all the air pollution. But they do it, right? They do it. So like you know, if you're in Los Angeles, like you can find weeds in the park. So that you also need to be able to properly identify. So there are foraging books for local areas. So I have foraging books for the Northeast because I live in New York. You could find foraging books for the West if you live in California or Nevada or Utah, right? There are foraging books for that specific area. You just search for it. I used the library because it was free and I was on a budget. So I would just get out all these books and some of them had recipes. Some of them, you know, get ones with pictures so you can properly identify. I do not recommend going and getting an app or going on the internet because anyone can post anything there. And so unless you know a reputable app that a forager told you about, I don't recommend doing that. I recommend getting a book, like an actual book with a cover with paper pages and going through the book and comparing it and learning what the plant looks like at different times of year, right? So what grows by me in New York may not grow in California. So because the listeners are located everywhere, I'm not going to mention plants, but there are certain plants that grow right now by me in the spring that are very supportive of the digestive system and the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system doesn't have any way of pumping out the toxins, but it's like the garbage disposal of your body. And so anything that your body is trying to detox out, it goes through the lymph system, but a lot of times it's clogged. So like if your armpit area or your chest area or your groin area or your inner thighs is sore and puffy, that's because your lymph is not moving. And that was a big issue I had because my body was trying to get rid of all these toxins, but there was too many to get rid of at once. So it was becoming backed up. So I created a balm for that because then it helped move it through. And then I was peeing more and I was feeling like less of this pain around that area. But also you could do energy medicine exercises and work with the meridians. You could do sound healing, like again, bringing in this ancient wisdom, this science that exists, right? So there is science around it. It's not woo-woo. And being curious about how you can implement Mother Nature and her wisdom in your life, right? So maybe you like to go to the beach. Maybe you hang out at the beach more. Maybe you implement taking a walk after dinner every night. Maybe you sit outside and just look at the sky. Maybe you walk your dog. I mean, people did these things during COVID. It was like a novel concept. I mean, this is how I live my life every day, right? So it's bringing more of that back in of how can this feel good to me? How can I bring this in easily? Because we want to manage small steps. Because if you try to take a leap, it's not going to work. The body's designed to heal, but it's also designed to keep you safe. So if you try to, do this huge, big behavior shift, the body's going to think like, oh my God, we're dying. And it's going to sabotage you. And you're going to think like, oh, that doesn't work for me. That was stupid. Why didn't that work? It worked for everybody else, right? But it's nothing wrong with you. It's just understanding how the body's designed. Just like we understand that there's other things out there for us to work and heal with.
There are. And that is something that is super important when it comes to this show is that, because I don't push big pharma in any way, shape, or form. I am all about, let's try to get us down to a baseline and figure out how we're actually feeling. And then approach this from, a different approach where we can look at the healing properties of what's around us instead of just like, oh, all right, well, I'm going to go to CVS. I've got a copay for $5 and I get whatever it is that I need. And it's not actually what you need. And that is my perspective. I know that you share that as well, Amy, but it's such a challenge when you're talking about chronic pain because we feel like we have to surrender all the time to X, Y, and Z. And surrendering doesn't mean that we're weak. Our body is not the enemy. We have to reawaken the intuition that we have within us to truly heal. And by doing that, I love the idea of going out in nature so much because on this show, I talk with a lot of people about their traumas and things that they've been through. And so, and on the meet and greet specifically, because I meet and greet with every guest before I have them on the show. And we learn a lot about each other and we get a lot of stuff out of the way before we record. But it's really interesting for me, I've had to figure out a way to kind of divest what happens when I talk to people because what was happening is I was taking it as an empath, as you know, Amy, and as well as my listeners know at this point, I'm a massive empath and I take on everybody else's stuff. I just do. I take on their darkness and despair. I take on their loss of hope. I take on weaknesses. I take on the fact that they feel like their body is going on against them. I take on their trauma. I do all of that because that's who I am. And I had to figure out a way to kind of divest that. And in order for me to do that, the only way was as soon as I was done with every single meet and greet with somebody that was giving me a fairly traumatic story or what have you, I had to go outside. I had to go stand outside in nature. And I know it's hard with my feet and stuff, but I still would take off my little shoes and standing in grass is basically standing in an entire, a tub of razor blades, but I still do it. So I go stand out and I stand out in the grass and I feel the cool of the grass and I feel the ground and I look up at the sky and I breathe in this nature to help okay, and send that out. Because if we keep taking in all of these toxicities that are around us, no matter what they are, whether it's an environmental toxicity, whether it's an emotional toxicity, a relationship, whatever it is, we keep them in here. And like we've talked about on the show, body keeps the score. We're holding on to it. We're holding on to all of it and we're not surrendering. But something that's really important that I've learned from you is surrendering does not make you weak. And I think that's very important for everybody to listen to. Just because you're okay, I'm giving in. I've got to get through what I'm doing doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a weak human being because you need to give a shit about your life and how you want to do it. And also something that I think is really important is to not have people that are in your life that maybe you mentioned woo-woo, because I say woo-woo all the time because my sweetie thinks a lot of the things that I do is just woo-woo. And I'm like, okay, good for you. You and I are very different in our mind, body, spirit connection to the planet that we live on. I am not going to let him make me feel crappy about the way I feel about it, nor will I do the same for him. He doesn't do that at all. But I'm just saying it's just one of those things where I've surrendered my body and my soul and my spirit to this show, to my healing and where I'm going, because I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I know that the things that I'm doing right now are healthy and are balanced in relation to Mother Nature and the way that I want to heal. And I think that you and I align so much in that regard. I am not foraging my weeds out in the front yard right now. I can tell you that much, but I'm not against it.
No, it's good. It's being open, right? And like you said, so surrender isn't a dirty word. It's not quitting. It's not giving up. That's what we're taught in our society, but it's asking for help, asking for help from
Yes.
something bigger than you. So for me, that's Mother Nature, right? So I'm like, what do I need to do here? And then, it sounds crazy, but like the plants will tell me, like, you need to eat me more. You need to make a bomb out of me. You need to combine me in a tincture, right? And I listen to that because it works. Because when I go and lead with my mind, right, the mind is just simply part of the body. But that's how we live in our society. Everything needs to be logical. Everything is black and white. There's only right or wrong. There's no gray. There's no middle. But the mind is simply part of the body. And so we can remember that the mind needs a break, right? So especially like with you, when you had a concussion and you're still dealing with it, like your brain is asking for a break. It's asking for you to slow down. It's asking for help, right? But we're taught that these messages from the body mean it's broken. There's something wrong with us, but it's not. It's just trying to get your attention. It's asking for help. And these messages that are parlayed as symptoms that we ignore, we try to numb them, are just messages from the body to lead us on a different way of being, right? Leading us back to how we are designed to be rather than what we're told to be now. So it's an idea of unlearning. The healing process is a huge unlearning process because you have to unlearn all the shit that you learned from a kid from before age 7 that was not even yours. Like Bruce Lipton talks about this in his book, Beyond Biology of Belief, in that all these programs and belief systems we inherit, they're not ours. We pick them up from our culture, society, our parents, whatnot. And then we think they're right. And like when someone questions it, we get angry at them and they're wrong. We have to make them wrong for us to feel safe. That's the way that we are. That's just being human. But you don't have to be like that because it also keeps us stuck. It keeps us stuck in pain. It keeps us stuck in disease. It keeps us stuck in wanting to always be right. It keeps us stuck in being unhappy. And so when we can be curious about that and wonder, okay, so what I'm doing isn't working. What else could I be doing? Who else maybe could I speak to about this, right? And understanding that there is no one answer, right? So like I tell people, I don't have one protocol for you. I don't have one pill. I don't have one supplement. I don't have, one program that's going to fix it because everyone is different. We all have different experiences. We all have different needs. And so it's important for you to connect back to that intelligence that's within you and to trust that it's there to help you and then to listen to it and to begin to follow what it's telling you to do.
Well, and I think listening is the biggest thing that we in chronic pain community and trauma informed community as well is we hide, we're scared, we're worried, we're worried about judgment, we're worried about sharing, or all of those things where it's like, don't be anymore. Like, and that's one of the reasons why I started this show too, is to get people to understand that you can be vulnerable, you can be organic, you can share whatever you want to, and you're safe here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that was really hard for me in starting this show was to open up and talk about things that are overwhelming, that are scary, that are traumatic, that are painful. And that I was scared to talk about. And I was scared my whole life. And now I'm here and I am less overwhelmed. That is even though there's so much being thrown at me at the same time, I'm less overwhelmed with my body and my past than I was before because I'm talking about it. And I decided to get curious. You always use the word get curious. And I love that phrase. I'm excited to be more curious about the why behind the reasons why I'm in pain, the reasons why I've had insomnia my whole life, the reasons why X, Y, and Z. And if you're not willing to get curious, then, pop off and go listen to another show because this is what we're here for, is to feel less overwhelmed, right? We're here to get curious. We're here to be vulnerable. We're here to be black, white, gray, red, pink, whatever shade you are. That's what we're here for. And it's a challenge all over the map for everybody because everybody feels a little differently. There's people that will listen to this episode and be like, what? I'm going to go eat my weeds. Fuck you. I'm out. Okay, that's fine. Get curious though. Because I guarantee you're going to look at weeds a little differently when you walk your dog in the neighborhood this week. All right.
Yeah. And like, if you get really angry about it, right? Like if you're like, get really heated, like this is bullshit, question why that is. Why do you feel like that? Why is that triggering you so much, right? Because it's going against the paradigm, because it's going against what you've been taught. That doesn't mean it's wrong, right? Again, like it doesn't need to be black or white. There's so much gray. There's so many people that use plant medicine. There's so many people that use energy medicines. Like we didn't touch on homeopathy, but homeopathy is energy medicine and plant medicine. And you and I both have used homeopathy, and I use it extensively for a lot of different things, in that it's created from everything that walks this earth. So whether it's a rock, whether it's a insect, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, and it's heavily diluted. But the difference is it works energetically with your body to bring you back into balance. Pharmaceuticals can't do that. Surgery can't do that. It just inflicts another layer of trauma. And when we're taught that, our emotions aren't real because we can't see them, when we're taught that this idea that what we feel is not valid, it perpetuates this trauma in the body, which just leads to more pain. It just leads to more disease. It just leads to more imbalance and disconnection. So when we're triggered like that, rather than just reacting, which is what we always do, right? To find the awareness to stop. And again, it's not going to happen all the time because you're human. So don't shame yourself over it. But to wonder, like, why is this bothering me? Why is what Lyndsay and Amy saying, like, causing me to think that this is bullshit? And then go and do your research. And please don't go on Google, because you're not going to find anything of worthiness there, because it's all censored and they want you to see what they want you to see. So go and get a book out about plant medicine. Go and get a book out about foraging. Go and get a book out about energy medicine, right? And like listen to what these people are saying, because it's something that's been around for 5,000 years. And traditional Western medicine has only been around for 250 years. And it's based on a sick care system. It's based on money. And it's based on profits. It's not based on you being well. The doctor doesn't benefit if you don't come back every 3 months, right? To renew your prescription or have a checkup. So questioning of, I was taught this way. I was taught that things had to look this way, but why? Why can't it look differently? So I always say that everyone thinks being different is bad. Why is being different bad when it's the same root word as difference? If I'm making a difference, that's good. But if I'm different, that's bad. Why is that? Because somebody told me that, right? Doesn't mean it's true.
Oh my God, woman. There's so much here, and there's so much to talk about, especially about our mind, body, and spirit, and our breath, and how we can support each other in this. And there are some people that are going to be just like, not interested. Great. Good for you. Try to go after looking at yourself a little bit from a different perspective, because if you're sitting and stewing in your stuff and you're still, I'm going to use a new line that I've been using lately. It's called fuckstrated. If you are fuckstrated right now because everything is fucking frustrating you, maybe just for a moment, tip over your kettle for a second, be like, let's get curious about something else. Because if you're continuously being fuckstrated, and you're frustrated about every doctor you've gone to that has let you down, and you're frustrated about everything else in life, why not open your eyes to another potential approach to your care? And I think Mother Nature has a lot of words to say to us. I mean, science aside, what's science? The world, Mother Nature speaks to us in every way, shape, or form. And you just need to listen a little bit. We just need to pay more attention to the things that really, if you really get down to the nitty gritty and what you're feeling about yourself and the way and your place in this world and your place in this environment and your place with nature, honestly, you're not going to fail when you find out that's not too bad of an idea to go down this road. What do you have to lose? I mean, honestly, getting off of some pharmaceutical that is not doing anything for you but causing you problems, what do you have to lose outside of trying something different and being a little bit more open and being more connected to the people that are in your life and the world in which we live in? So, okay, where can we find you?
So mind, body, spirit, breath. And then also I've talked about the lessons of unlearning. There's an ebook in the notes, the 7 major lessons and discoveries I had for my decade plus healing journey. And then there's also an e-journal that we're including in the bottom so you can understand and decipher what the symptoms from your body, the messages are trying to tell you.
Yeah. And I think that's really important about the messages our bodies are trying to tell you. There's guys, you know me at this point, like I love my tattoos. And I've got one that I'm working on right now. And it says, and I don't know if this is appropriate right now, but I kind of feel like it might be, but it says, they whispered to her, "You cannot withstand the storm." And she whispered back, "I am the storm."
I love that. Yeah.
And I love that because I am the effing storm. Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with before we get the heck out of here, Aim?
No, just that you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. And find someone who will support you on that journey.
Well, I love that because we aren't broken. We might feel it sometimes, guys. I mean, I definitely have my days. I'm a kind of a broken little piece of hot mess over here. But you know what? I'm not at the same time because I feel like I'm meeting so many people that are healing and helpful and also validate the feelings that you have. Don't let people knock you down, because you feel a certain way. How you feel is how you feel. And don't let anybody tell you any different. And I know us women, we go through a lot of that, especially in the medical field. We go into multiple doctor's appointments all the time and we are made to feel small or made to feel like our message is not clear or it doesn't exist or just take this pill and you'll be fine. And if it's not, then come see me again in a month and come see me again in 2 months. We want to heal. In our industry here in the United States specifically, we're in what did you say earlier, Amy, in relation to the fact that it's a profit organization. They like to keep us sick care. That was what it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sick care. They want us sick. They do. Because if we're healthy, how are they making any money? And I know that's, me on my soapbox and that's where I'm always going to be in regards to that. But I've spent a fortune to feel worse. And I'm sick of it. And I hope you guys are too.
Mm-hmm.
You are exclusively invited to share this Getting Curious VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Please follow the Pain Game podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Do you know someone who is living in and with chronic pain? If you do, send them our way here to the Pain Game podcast. I'd love to connect with them and hear their heartfelt stories of strength and wisdom and awesomeness. They can DM me, they can text me, they can call me. I am here. I am your pain sponsor. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.